You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
This is part 2 of episode 328. And if you haven't listened to 328, go listen to it. It's all about help. And you definitely need help. We all need help. But that was that episode. And now we're all about why we don't remember good things.
Why is it that we hold on to this shit?
Right.
Why is it that we...
Just so that this is a somewhat of a standalone episode, even though we do encourage you to go back and listen to the other one. The concept and idea stemmed from this book that Craig is reading, which is me. I'm Craig, in case you haven't listened to the podcast before. And the book is It Didn't Start With You. And so, and I'm sure that this isn't the author of the book. I'm sure this isn't his original concept or idea either, right? But we only remember the bad things that have happened to us because that's how we kept ourselves safe and that's how we survived. Mm-hmm. And that's a evolutionary thing of when you're a hunter and a gatherer and you're out there trying to survive in the wilderness and in the wild, you have to remember where danger is.
Right.
So you're going to remember, don't go over that hill because that's where that bad thing happened. That's where the raptor ate, your cousin. Or we only drink from this watering hole because remember the other watering holes are where the alligator ripped your mom's head off. Whatever it is, right? So we only remember the bad things because that's how we keep ourselves safe.
I was thinking about how this hasn't been something that's been brought to awareness. And words. Here we go. I got this.
Slow down, baby.
I know I need to slow down.
We're coming on the heels of that episode that we just ended. And it was intense and we're moving fast.
But... And I got 2 pots of coffee in today. So what? Here we go. I was thinking how, you know what, we'll get to it. I'm sorry.
Please go.
Okay. How that sparked in me and that affected me so much when you said that, because I've never had an awareness of that. I mean, you've heard, why do you only remember the bad things?
Right.
You choose not to remember anything good. Why don't you remember? They use that as a thing against you too.
Even in our relationship, I've done that.
Oh, okay.
Think about that where I'm like, you only talk about the bad things I've done. You don't remember any of the good things that I've done. How come you don't ever talk about the good things that I've done? Well, motherfucker, turns out the only reason I talk about all the bad things you've done is because that's why I'm trying to keep myself safe. By remembering all the bad things that you've done so that they don't happen again. Is that what you're talking about?
I wasn't talking about you, no.
Okay, sorry.
But I'm like thinking about that, and I want to reiterate all the things that I think you're amazing for and all the good things.
But what were you saying?
We can do that another time.
Sorry, I got squirreled.
It's okay.
Because I thought that's how that plays out.
You immediately heard me being like, you've done this wrong.
No. I wasn't like suddenly in my shame bubble. It was just, that's how that manifests in that dynamic.
Well, true, right? And this vice versa. Anyways, that hit on how I'm really sad about having to have things spark happy memories. Having to have things spark, which is also why I have attachment to items, right? It's like I don't have attachment to items that brought pain, but attachment to items that that have a happy memory attached to it.
Yeah.
That I see. And and then there's so many times you grab this and you're like, how did I forget? How did I forget? Like these important memories, and these are happy, and you're like, how did that not, how did that disappear in my head? And I didn't need that happy memory to survive physically, but I kind of did. I did need that happy memory to survive. And just how much, so when you said that, I was like, oh, that clarifies it so much. And a way that stays hidden is, what do we do with bad, really traumatic memories? We repress them.
Yeah.
So it's never really focused on that we are using these things to keep surviving, and why we only remember the bad stuff, and why we're hanging on to negativity when we're also programmed that you repress the bad things, because uncovering these negative memories is shit that keeps happening. You're like, ah. So it's the way that it stays hidden to keep that cycle in its cyclical motion without...
There's a lot here to unpack.
Yeah.
My brain's starting to spin. So I'm thinking about how, you think back to your childhood and you kind of skirt over the good stuff You're like, yeah, I had a good childhood. And you can kind of like,
Some people say that.
right? Some people.
Right.
And then, but I think in our mind, so like, because this is what plays out for me, right? If somebody asks me about my childhood, I might tell them some good things about my childhood.
Yeah.
But my mind is thinking about all the bad things.
Yeah.
My mind is going through all the negative stuff from my childhood. So like subconsciously and internally, I'm going over all this shitty stuff. But externally, what I'm talking about is maybe 1 or 2 good memories or, you know, this, that, or the other. I'm trying to paint a picture externally to the world and to the people that I might be talking to. But internally, I'm remembering all the bad things. And then it's like, the idea that we only remember the bad things as a way to keep ourselves safe. That is so, it's spot on, I think, from that like evolutionary standpoint of that's how we've done it and that's how we keep ourselves safe, right? From a survival, like an instinctual survival kind of mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about how fucking backwards that is. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
How just ass backwards it is to only remember the good things in an effort to keep yourself safe. Because only remember the bad things in order to keep yourself safe.
Right.
Because it doesn't, I mean, the truth of it is, was that a beneficial way to survive back in the day where we had, you know, predators attacking us and danger around every corner? Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I think it was needed, right? But I think it's time to shift that. And now we have to start consciously remembering the good things. Because that now is what our survival is based off
Right.
of. It's based off of connection and love.
That's what keeps us going.
Right. That's what's always kept us going.
Right.
But we needed this other thing at first.
We no longer need to know what not to do. We need to know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what feels good, what's happy, what's healthy, what's joyful, what's
Yeah.
perpetuating love and connection and growth. Not just how do I survive?
Yeah.
Even though a lot of people are still in that spot, I'm there a lot. How do I survive? And it's not in spite of anyone else, but sometimes that is like depending on where you are and what your perception is, sometimes that's what it needs to be. How do I survive?
Yeah.
And then why? Like, how do I find these happy spots? How do I find these spots to keep going?
Could you?
I don't know. I'm way distracted. This is bringing up so much in my brain. So I'm like, these things I want to talk about. So I'm sorry if I'm.
Please go everywhere with it.
Well, I don't want to monopolize all of this because this is your concept. You sparked this. So this is like brand new awareness
We're
for
having
me.
a conversation.
And I'm like, what? But it's like sparking things. Like I'm making correlations. And it also ties into something that I heard this morning.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So it's the way that you remember things and the way that you associate. So you remember the bad things. So you know what not to do. So you can keep surviving. But then how you also associate the negative things and your surroundings and your role with it. So this will harken back to childhood trauma, right?
Yay.
So, well, we were just talking about, childhood. So this goes back to how self-loathing and self-blame occurs.
Okay.
Because when you have children that were abused and how it's their fault in their brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things go wrong. It's the kid's fault is how they hear it.
Yes.
Whether it's in their own mind or whether they're also getting blamed by other people and parents.
Yeah.
It's likely both, right? Some will say it's nothing, it's not your fault. And others will be like, this is all your fault. But the way you internalize trauma and bad things happening is you did something wrong as a kid. And that carries over to an adult of I'm wrong. I do wrong things. Things are wrong because of me.
Yes.
And just continuing on.
And the story of my life.
Right. And then you're still like finding ways to survive with that. So remembering the bad, remembering what you did wrong. So you cannot do that, even though you're still perpetuating like however.
Mm-hmm.
And this concept that I hadn't heard before is because we're trying to heal that and not blame ourselves and not struggle with worth, have worth, know that we're worth something. We're worthy of love. We're worthy of safety. But our core wound is we are not lovable. We are not worthy of love. We are not safe because that is easier than as a child who needs protection to survive. A child isn't able to survive on their own. They need protection. They need somebody taking care of them. They need food. They need shelter. And somehow these kids are finding out how to survive in these horrible environments. But when these things are happening, the reality being it's my fault, I'm to blame, I'm bad, not only gives you some sense of control, but it is easier to survive than realizing that your parent or whoever is supposed to be protecting you, your protector, cannot be trusted. Mm-hmm. So when you're at fault, there's a chance of survival. There's a chance of you doing it better. But when you realize, I am not protected, I am not safe, and the people that are supposed to protect me, I cannot trust, are not going to protect me and are the ones hurting me, that crashes everything.
Right. It's like a message that your brain can't process.
Cannot process.
This is the reality, and your body's like,
nope.
I can't process that.
That's not survivable.
So I'll create this other thing where, it's my fault.
It's my fault.
Then I at least have some control over it, and I can do something about it if it's my fault.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
That is.
And fucked.
So.
Yeah. And it makes so much sense. Yeah, it's so hard. This whole dynamic of like the last episode, one of the things that came up for me that we didn't get to and that we didn't talk about and touch upon was that earlier thing that was like brought up at the beginning or towards the beginning, where it was like we didn't have an avenue for help.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't like, well, there's always help available. Sometimes, especially when you're a kid, right? Especially when you're in an environment and in a family system that does not have safe help.
What about small town, small community, where any time of help would bring embarrassment and shame, so you're even more, you can't reach out.
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense how we got so scared of help.
Yeah.
When we were little. Because there just wasn't
there was not any
help available. I think about how, like, my parents were supposed to be the ones that helped, right? And the next would be my brothers. And all of that help from my brothers was violent or like condescending, making you feel weak or stupid for needing help. So then it's pretty much, okay, cool, I'll just deal with all of this on my own. I'll just figure out how to do all of this by myself then I won't ask for help.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
It's very sad.
There's so many little parts of us, babe, that we have to go and love. Anyways.
Yeah.
Anyways, you only remember the bad things.
Right?
Yeah. And I'm just sitting here remembering all the bad things right now.
Right.
I was thinking about in the course of our relationship, how that's kind of what we've done too.
Yeah. We've held on to things that have gone wrong.
Yeah. It's like that's not true, I guess. I think in the past few years, we've really been holding on to some really good memories that we have.
We have.
Do you know what I mean? We've created some really beautiful experiences together and had some really amazing memories to pull from, which is really cool.
I really like doing that.
Right. And then those memories have helped me also get through some difficult times in our relationship. So see, we're evolving.
We are.
We're doing it in a different way than we used to.
Yeah, we think we have to be perfection in order to show progress.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like...
Not the case.
Not the case. Not even obtainable. Progress is progress.
Right.
Not perfection is progress. Only way I'm making any improvement is if it's perfect.
If it's perfect.
And I'm no longer doing the negative things. And I say I'm either perfect or I'm failing.
Right.
That's the story that gets on.
Yeah.
Because that's how you survive.
That's also how we were taught.
Right?
well, you're almost there. Keep practicing,
Yeah.
and then you'll get it.
Right? How many that encouragement now, if you just try a little harder, if you just work harder, if you would have really applied yourself, if you would have been trying this hard from the beginning, this is where you would have been. Oh, that's never fucking enough. Never enough.
What are some things that we could do? Oh my goodness. I gotta drink some more of this shitty coffee.
Right?
What are some things that we could do to rewire that dynamic of only remembering the bad things? Like, I'm curious now, right?
My first thought is just like having awareness of this is a big step.
Yeah.
Just having awareness, is like shining a light on this. And I don't know.
Is it hitting you pretty hard now?
It's hitting me so hard. It's hitting me so hard. And I'm thinking also, when you are in a fight or flight response most of the time, when you have like multiple traumas or a severe trauma, so you are normally in a fight or flight, it's hard to be in the present or in the window of tolerance where you're not in a fight or flight, you're in your body. With massive amounts of trauma, it's really hard to be there. Yeah. And massive amounts of trauma is, I guess, relative. Like, it's not a comparing, well, I don't have this person has it more, this person has trauma, I don't. No, wherever you were at. If you were in the fight or flight, you were in the fight or flight. There's no comparison of like, do you check enough boxes to be considered? Or I'm not going to check any boxes because I'm not a victim and I'm not going to be there. I don't have trauma. I am strong. I'm in control of my environment, which is kind of how I used to think. That's how I got through my traumas. Like, I was not in a traumatic environment. I did not have PTSD or anxiety or depression. I had no effects from a life of trauma. I won. They did not win. They didn't get to take anything else. They had my body. I had my soul, my heart. They didn't take anything else. And turns out I'm like, fuck. But it's okay. It's okay. I'm living my future. I got really wrapped up in that emotion. Yeah. And I lost my train of thought because that emotion took me. Fight or flight. Okay, I'm back. So it's really hard to be in the calm when you're not in the calm. So when you're only remembering the bad stuff for how you survive, you also have misperceptions of bad stuff as well. So when you have trauma, perceived trauma brings your body to a trauma state. Yeah. Which makes it really hard to be in the present and to pull the good from it. Like overwhelm. Being overwhelmed triggers anxiety. With anxiety triggers adrenaline. And when you feel the adrenaline, it's because you're not safe. Something is happening, so you're in a fight or flight. And overwhelm can be something coming at you, being overwhelmed, right? And an intense thing, and overwhelmed with trauma and danger coming at you. Or overwhelm can be a sink full of dishes that you've got to get to.
Our sink's full of dishes. I'm overwhelmed by it.
That's how I'm like hitting it. So when you have overwhelm come up in your body, when you have a history of trauma, which we do.
Who doesn't?
Right? Not we, but like we people, we do. Yeah. Then you're still getting that spike of anxiety, which is releasing adrenaline, which is telling your body that you are not safe. And so how do you look over and see the good? How are you like holding on to the beauty of the memory, which is whatever, right? We just got done having this like really cool kiss in the kitchen. Or I'm not remembering the kiss. I'm not remembering when we looked into each other's eyes and had that connection. I'm looking like, oh, the dishes, all the shit that I got to do, and how things are starting to stack up. Yeah. So overwhelm is triggering I'm not safe, which is triggering I don't know how to stay in the moment and allow the happy memories, the true memories of what is to come forth, because I'm not there. Like the asking for help episode that we did, the last one, I wasn't in the room with you. I was somewhere else, even though I was completely safe. The situation that came through, that PTSD response that happened, I wasn't there. Yeah. So when I look back on the memory, kind of taking a pause to find what is actually true in that moment. Now I can look at it and see what's true in that moment. It was a beautiful moment with you and I. I was supported. I was loved. I was in a safe environment. I had safety all around me, and I had love all around me. But that takes a conscious effort to see that and to see what it really is and to sit in that. Had we not gone through that process, I don't know that it would have. It would have been a traumatic memory where things went wrong. You know, all of the stories that I had in my head. Like, that's how it can go.
Yeah. That the experience that we talked about on the last episode could have very easily become another triggered traumatizing experience.
Right.
It could have very easily been something else that you, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's like something else that feeds the narrative of it's not okay to ask for help.
Okay. I was manipulated and that was used against me and I cannot trust.
Yeah. And somehow that didn't happen.
That didn't happen.
Who knows? This book that sparked this other thing that we're talking, the whatever the name of that book was. What is it?
It didn't start with you.
Yeah, it didn't start with you. There was another part of it that talked about, because it's really involved in regards to like your epigenetics and how, you know, that concept and idea that like it goes back 3 generations, right? Because you're the egg inside of your mom, who was the egg inside of your grandma. So it's like whatever the grandma was experiencing affected that egg, which became your mother.
Yeah.
And then the mother, and I'm following this process in my head because it's still confusing, but you know, the mother that is then the fetus inside the grandma during the process of
Do you want a little hope?
Not production. When the baby's growing, and at some point the eggs are grown inside the baby that's inside the mom. That's your grandma. Now you're inside your mom, who's inside your grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally your mom's born and you're still inside of her because you're the egg. Like that whole dynamic that you're the egg inside your mom, who's inside your grandma, is like, that's a rabbit hole that you could totally sit in for 20 years and still never fully grasp the weight of all of that.
Yeah.
It's fascinating and overwhelming to think about that dynamic. Is it not for you? Or are you just like, yeah, it makes total sense and it's not that big of a deal?
I think it's because I think it makes more sense for
women. I
think it's because we women have the understanding that we are born with the amount of eggs that we have, right? As to where we don't reproduce eggs as to where men reproduce sperm.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Manufacture sperm. Yeah. Got a sperm factory. Yeah.
Ovary owners and testicle owners. Like, we'll go with that. So it's like that. We're like, oh, that makes sense. And also like, ugh, like that's intense. You know, that you
it's
feel
crazy
stuck.
Though. It's crazy to think that, like from like the energetic standpoint, it makes sense to me that we're all the same and we're all together and we're all experiencing everything at the same time.
Yeah.
But then like there's the science to prove it.
Right. Science, bitches.
Where, your mom was going through something when she was a child and experiencing something, you're right there along with her, experiencing it with her. The chemical things that influenced and shaped your mother's somatic and emotional experience over the course of her life and contributed to her traumatic experience and her programming and her wiring, you were right there along the ride for that journey, even before you were, you're just an egg experiencing all of that. And then obviously as a fetus during that 10-month period, but that dynamic, and this is what also really fascinated me, the concept I hadn't really thought about as well, right? So we are programmed with whatever it is that we need to survive the environment that we're going to be birthed into. Mm-hmm. So it's like somehow evolutionarily, the beautiful, chaotic experience of being a human, if you're going to be born into an abusive family, your chemical programming is going to be set up so that you can survive that.
That's so fucked up.
Right? That's really fucked up and weird. Where it's like, you're not going to be born into, like if you happen to have chaos and, a background of abuse and alcoholism and whatever else in your family and in your family history, that means that your chemical makeup and your DNA and everything that you're programmed with, so that when you're finally born into that environment, is already set up so that you can survive that environment. And that doesn't mean that like you've got healthy coping mechanisms,
Right?
and suddenly you're programmed with a healthy way to survive that environment. You're programmed with this thing that we're talking about now, where you only remember the bad things. Like you're programmed with everything to survive that environment in the base, like animalistic survival kind of reptilian way.
Yeah.
Where you're going to know how to survive that experience and keep yourself safe in the most fucked up way imaginable, because you were programmed that way, because you've been in your grandma. Like that's, oh my goodness, it's so crazy. Right? Yeah. Now it's sitting with you a little bit more.
It's sitting with me different, because it was like the science of it was like, it totally made sense. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, it's not like the eggs are the body, the fetus growing has the eggs in it. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't, everybody has a mom. Right. Everybody came from, a mom. So whether or not a mom was in your life or not isn't what I'm saying, but everybody was born from a mom. Like the science of it was
like
just
the
there.
Surface level understanding of it. It's like, oh yeah, and that totally makes sense.
The part that my brain could handle was, yeah, that makes sense, that I experienced, right? Mm-hmm. And then the part that my brain couldn't handle, which is what I did not want to look at, again, here we go. You try so hard to protect your kids.
Yeah.
You try so fucking hard to shield them from the shit that you experienced.
From everything, yeah.
You're like, I know what this feels like. I don't want you to have to experience that. And there's shit that we continue on, and then there's stuff that we don't, right? Mm-hmm. So I continued into, I don't even know how to say that. So my continuation was to continue the abusive relationships and marry an abusive person, have kids in then an abusive environment, and, just that cycle, right? Until
you repeated that pattern.
I repeated that pattern, and then I broke it. I've seen the effects of what they have had to endure while living in that house, mm-hmm. and how it is still affected, and how like all of the healing, like the more you heal, the more you realize, man, I was really fucking that up. You have to really, you see all the ways that you were doing it through trauma and through programs that weren't your best interest, but you didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And so you keep seeing that. But how you said everything that I'm having a hard time with these words, because my first reaction is defeat, is just defeat. I was okay with handling the brunt of things that my mom experienced.
Yeah.
Right. And also I came with that ability to handle her emotions, to handle her experiences, to handle all the shit that happened to her. I've been programmed for that. So I know how to, but
survive that.
I thought I was shielding my children from that, and just sitting with that everything that, like, that hit me so fucking hard, that everything that I experienced, that they were right there experiencing it with me.
Right,
and I'm like, I'm saying that a lot. I don't like that. That's right now, that awareness is almost too much.
Yeah.
Like I can't really sit in it right now because it's too much. I'm like, it's just too much. That's a lot. And I don't think I've really, I know I don't live in a world now where I have minimized the trauma that I have experienced. I don't live in a world where I'm like, it's not this, it's not that, I'm really becoming aware of what I've actually endured. And, but that just hits in a whole other level, because when you see that that's like before your kids were even born, like them experiencing that really brings a light on, oh, this is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when I don't, epigenetics is bullshit.
So there's another aspect that we can highlight,
Right.
I mean, we don't want to spiral too far out into it.
Oh, I'm spiraling.
Only because for the sake of the podcast, so that we can finish this episode without dissolving into a mess of tears and chaos.
Yeah.
They were there for all the good stuff too.
Which, to bring back to the spark of this podcast,
Exactly.
I can't remember.
But that's an important part.
Yeah.
Right? They were there for all the beautiful things. They were there for all the amazing things.
Yeah.
All the beautiful experiences that you've had that dumped good hormones into your body, that released happy chemicals into your body.
Yeah.
All the love that you've experienced, all these amazing things that have happened in your life. They were also there for that as well.
They got the good.
Yeah.
That's why.
That happened
That
as
happens.
well. Like we can't equally look at the dark and be like, well, it's all this negative shit, without at least acknowledging and honoring the fact that there's a bunch of really positive things as well
I can see that.
that they experienced and went through while they were riding around in your belly when you were a kid.
I can see that because I absolutely believe that our kids are made up of the very best parts of us.
Right?
Like everybody has something good in them. Everybody has something good. So if you're a child and you're like, that's what I came from, even they had something good. And that's what you are made up of. You came from the best parts.
You came from the part that like... 'cause
The
if you
best
think about-
parts.
it is the best part, but that's also science. That's also evolution, right?
Yeah, sometimes I need to wrap myself up in a happy blanket because like you said, it's got to be both.
I was giving you the happy blanket.
Were
like,
you? I thought you were going to be like, also the dark.
No.
Like, let me sit and enjoy for a
Because
minute.
The best part is what gets propagated and pushed
Yeah.
forward. And do you know what I mean? Like the strongest will survive. Like over the course of history and time and with evolution, like the parts that don't really work, the parts that have to be corrected, all this kind of stuff that takes place so that we're the strongest, healthiest, best versions of ourselves for survival. That's what gets pushed forward.
Yeah.
So they really are the best part of you, because that's the part that's going to go on and continue the species and continue to create. So they are the best part of you
Yeah.
from
They
a really
are.
deep-seated place of like the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
The part, this dumb book, and it's not a dumb book. The guy that wrote this book, you did a wonderful job. But like a good book, it's triggering the fuck out of me and it's really difficult to read. And I hadn't really thought a lot about, it's not to say I hadn't thought about it because I've been thinking a lot about it, but everything that's at play right now in culture and in the world and society and this whole dynamic of, I don't know how to articulate this because this might be too big of a thing in my head to try to talk about right now because it's still kind of like this big fresh thing. But, and I mentioned it to you not long ago too, right? But like the mother wound and this dynamic of like, there is something sacred and special and unique about the feminine and about mother and about like the energy of mother and not just Mother Earth and Mother Nature and our mothers and everything like that, but that thing that is so uniquely like moms and dads love differently. Here I go trying to extrapolate this thought in a really random way, but I was thinking about like that mere fact that we are present with our mothers throughout so many different experiences, even before we are inceptualized into the fetus growing inside of them, right? That I think is what I'm talking about. Like that deep, 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 deep bond of being like coming forth from your mother, being a part of your mother, being connected to your mother is so different than the masculine side of it, where
There's also just for the cell part, how you're talking about being before you're even a fetus in your mother. When you are a fetus, and so now you have the genes from mom and dad, right? And now you're the fetus, the independent. You are exchanging cells with the mom during that process. So you are the egg there, and then your person, your combined cells, the fetus is still in that process of exchanging cells during that period. That was fascinating. So
there's well, that's the deep thing that I'm having awareness of how significant of a bond, as well as how integral that is to not just life and everything like that, but the dynamic of like mother and child, and how integrated you are as an individual thing. And then the separation that comes from giving birth, right? And this umbilical cord, and then the cutting of the cord, and then breaking apart and separating. And like, in order to become autonomous and healthy and functioning, you have to go through like all those stages of separation from your mother.
What about those that are breastfeeding too? Because then they're still like...
all of it. Right. And then enter in trauma and how it affects and influences all of that. Right. And like, if you look at the past, I don't know, 100 years, 200 years, 150 years or something like that, probably 100 years, maybe 130 years or something.
I don't know. What are you getting to? Maybe
it's been 143 years and 7 months.
Interesting. You picked 143, which means I love you. Keep going.
The way that we gave birth and the way that birth has been handled, right?
Yeah.
Where it's very, very different than it used to be.
Yeah.
And the sanitization of it, and, you know, the birthing process,
the coldness
and
of
the
it.
coldness, and take that baby and put it in another room and separate it from the mother, and all of that kind of stuff that has taken place has created such a massive wound that needs to be healed.
That is true. That is true.
Like such this huge, big thing that has taken place in culture. And it doesn't matter if you are a man or a woman. You came from a woman.
Yeah.
You experienced. You were born, right? And that birthing process did not take place inside of a man's body.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're...
Yeah, I wonder if like that's an important thing to touch on. I thought it was just like assumed, but we're talking about eggs, right? So it has that female approach, but as a like every baby, regardless of their gender, every baby was in a mom. So your egg was there.
Exactly.
So it affects you. Every child was born.
Right.
So that affects you. So it is not, I didn't even hear that it might just sound like it was like, this is just for women to experience. No, this is human experience.
The human experience is this experience.
Yeah.
And it's directly correlated and connected to your mother and to your grandmother and to your great grandmother. Like it's feminine.
It is.
Across the board. And you think now about how much trauma and wound and confusion there is around the feminine. And like the masculine is so in opposition to this thing that there's like, in my mind, I can see some energetic things about like if we just look at the straight birthing process where you have this baby that's ripped from their mother, put into another room, and how wounding and scarring and subconscious, like, it's like the thing that you were talking about where you can't understand, so you think it's your fault. And then you internalize that and then act out against the mother. And how painful birth is too on top of it. Right. Like it's not just the birther that experiences it, the baby is going through a very physically traumatic experience. So all of a sudden there's like incredible amount of pain. Yeah. And then, oh my goodness. Yeah. And if all you've ever known, like if all you've ever known as a baby is your mom, and you can't distinguish between mom and me, right? You don't have any distinction. It's just me. And then I just think about the repressed, subconscious, like unhealed wound that the masculine has in relation to this dynamic is what I'm talking about, like this mother wound and the way that it now manifests in all of this really toxic, masculine, destructive, controlling, manipulative, abusive hurting of the feminine and hurting of women. And do you know what I mean? Degrading. And like that to me just makes so much sense. So it's like, how do you make peace with that? How does the masculine come to understand the beautiful symbiotic relationship that it's had with the feminine? And like that's the reason for existence, is the feminine, right? I said this is a silly side note, but like I've known and said for a long time, and probably said it on this podcast at some point, right? Like if suddenly tomorrow we snap our fingers and men are gone, women will figure out a way to procreate. And if suddenly you snap your fingers and all women are gone, the world's over in like 7 days. Men are not going to figure out how to procreate without women. There's just no way. We would just destroy everything. Whereas women would figure out how to continue the species without men. They're so important and integral to everything. And yet there's this big wound that exists that has to be healed. And I think it directly correlates and connects back to that mother experience, the mother wound, the thing that takes place that is like kind of just been forgotten about, the significance and the importance of it, because it's everyone, right? It doesn't matter how you identify, you came from a mom. And we all did. And it's kind of like, that's the macro experience. And then the big, oh no, that's the micro. I get those two confused, but you know, we all stemmed forth from the same thing. You're looking at me all serious, like.
I was just hearing a deeper part of that. Is like everything you were saying, you know, I agree with the importance of women, the importance of but I think what gets missed and maybe contributes to part of the aggression and the wound is how it's coming out right now is men dismissing women, right? But it sounds like the core is women dismissing men. Like what you just said, the world would be fine. Women would figure out how to procreate, but if it was just men, it would be over. It's like from the core programming is that men aren't important. They're not good enough. Even though men are taking it out on women. Yes. Like this isn't just like, I'm not trying to like take that away. Women are being violated horrendously on a grander scale that is on the surface of that. But that wound that is coming from men just aren't as important. You wouldn't understand. You're not a woman. Men don't love as much. Men don't do this. Like maybe that story is damaging. Maybe that story is a wound that is having men come up and be like, I am important. I am big. I do have value. I will show you my value.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like one's more important than the other.
I agree. I don't think it is either.
I think.
Yeah. The other, like, when we were talking earlier about men reproducing sperm, right?
Yeah.
Like he touched upon that in the book a little bit, and I kind of didn't understand the concept, or I didn't get that side of it because I was sitting here thinking about, and truthfully, it's because I was swimming in that concept of like being an egg inside my mom, inside my grandma, inside my great grandma, and then I was thinking about, because it's, yes, I was a sperm inside my dad at some point, but I wasn't a sperm inside my dad when he was an egg inside my grandma.
Correct.
Right? But yet he was an egg inside my grandma.
Yes. And so his cells and his organisms that came to make sperm repeatedly.
Yes.
And instead of it just being like, it
so
took everything.
You could say I was inside my grandma on my dad's side as well.
You were in the cells of it.
Right.
The cells, the structure, the initial blueprinting of the DNA.
I guess in like, because I have to make things really simple in my brain. So I have to like see the metaphor of it. So inside my body, or inside a man's body, he's got a sperm factory. I'm picturing like a straight up factory where guys go to work, and
you were in the blueprints.
Yeah. Like the building blocks of that sperm factory that made me, that I was made from. I'm in that. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And does that seem accurate? Like
you were in the blueprints.
I feel like I have a really stupid brain at this point trying to understand something.
No, it's just, it's confusing. And a lot of times we try and correlate with equal has to equal, like equal.
Right. It's got to
right?
be 50-50.
It's got to be that. And if it looks different, then it's
one's
not.
got to be better or worse.
Exactly.
Right? Greater than, less than.
So because this is like blueprint as to where this is like foundation,
Mm-hmm.
you think, well, this one is more significant. And
They're
if
both.
you look at it, yeah, they're both, because then you have this egg that's already formed that, yeah, it's taken the surrounding, but it's already got its core and it's taken the surrounding. And then you look at the sperm that has to be created, that keeps going. So it's not only taking the foundation, it's taking everything. It is built from everything. So you have the foundation and it is not formed yet. So it's gathering like all of that, all of the life trauma. And then that's where it comes, which also grabs the healing if the healing is done.
Right.
And then that's where.
Man, I don't know
We're
how
scientists.
This is a science podcast.
You're welcome.
This is going, for generations to come, this will be played in 7th grade sex ed. We just explained genetics and what happens when this is how a baby's made.
Right?
Yeah, if they would have tried to tell me in 7th grade that I was an egg inside my grandma, but what the fuck are you talking about?
No, they weren't telling you any of that. They're like, never mind. That's a whole other podcast we're not going to spin off on right now.
All of it's overwhelming.
Right? An egg inside your grandma. That's weird.
Yeah, all of it's overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming. And it's also like, this has a potential. I'm feeling this. And I'm sure, like, so I'll just speak it, to be traumatizing on another level. Because while you're feeling traumatized by events and things and you're wanting separation, like feeling this kind of connection can make you feel stuck. And like there isn't liberation. So hearing this depth of connection can also feel traumatizing.
Is that what you're feeling now a little bit?
There's a part of it that is feeling traumatized by like the just like that stuckness, but also I have healing and I have awareness that this is like, oh, this is awareness, this is liberation, and there is beauty. There is beauty because why there's so much, there's also so much love. Like there's just so much love, and that is coming through too.
Think about how much good stuff we gave our children when they're alive.
Yeah.
That then affected our grandbabies that are inside of them already. Like all the good memories that our kids have.
I hope so.
Our kids have a lot of good memories.
Yeah.
Think about family vacations and think about Christmas mornings and think about...
Remember, we're remembering the bad things. So I'm trying to like really hone in on those good memories. And I'm like, oh.
And there's so many.
Yeah.
We've got so many. Let's wrap up with some good memories of our relationship.
Okay. Nude beach. I loved that. I will just say
memory.
that was like,
Have we ever told the story of that?
I don't know.
Let's tell
Maybe
the story.
we'll tell it another time.
Let's tell the story now.
I don't know. Does it come at the end of this? Trauma, then naked. Like that can be re-traumatizing. We took off all of our shields of shame, all of our cloaks, and basked in the water and the sun and in our love.
We got to tell the story now.
I don't want to.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Well, I'm just like, I'm nervous. I don't feel like it goes here. I know I said it. Okay, tell it.
Where does it go?
I don't know, Craig.
Several years ago, this was in 2019, I think.
19 or 18.
Yeah,
It might be 18.
18
18
or 19.
One
We
of
went
those
to
years.
California for a road trip. And the road trip was, it incorporated a couple of different things. I flew out to California and went to a retreat. It was a men's retreat. And then Stephanie flew out the Monday after or something like that.
I had just gotten back from my first retreat.
Yeah.
My first, like...
I think it was 2018.
I think it was 2018.
Because that's when we quit smoking too.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, it's been 2018.
Right? 4 years that we've been off the sauce. That reminds me, I totally smoked in my dream last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Anyways. We went to, I picked stuff up. Sorry, I'm all over the place now. So I picked you up in Oakland and then we hopped in the car and we drove up the coast and spent some time. Anyways, there was a part of the trip that I planned Did I tell you about it? I told you about it, didn't I? Or was it kind of a surprise?
I think it was kind of a surprise, but also
You
it
knew
wasn't like
about
you.
it.
Yeah,
You didn't spring it on
you.
you.
Didn't spring it. It wasn't like you all of a sudden like walked me out into. I'm like, whoa,
Hey, babe, we're going to go to the ocean. Bring your beach towel. That's all you'll need.
Yeah, it was a surprise there, and it was like, do you want to do this?
Mhm.
And like, here's this thing. So it wasn't a blindfold, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden there's.
Yeah, it was, maybe
It was
we'll
a
do this
consensual
thing.
surprise.
It was very consensual surprise. But there was a nude beach that we went to, and it was one that I had kind of researched and gone online and figured out where it was. And because they're kind of, you can definitely Google where a nude beach is and you'll get an idea, but it's not like a super easy thing to research and find out about, because they're unfortunately not that well. I don't know if they're well known or not. Anyways, we found
They're a
nude
little
beach.
hidden in America.
Yeah, this is a little hidden spot. And so we went,
Yeah.
and it was like an amazing experience. It was so cool. It was so freeing.
scary at
It was
first.
it's a very small beach. It wasn't a big nude beach. It was very small and secluded and kind of private. And
There wasn't a lot of people, which was also
there was
like,
probably, we probably saw less than a dozen people the entire time that we were there. I feel like there was probably even that, maybe 8 or 9 people that we saw.
yeah, I was okay. Yeah, I like that.
What did you think?
I was thinking like under 20, so close.
Yeah, there weren't that many.
Yeah, maybe there was also more for me. So I was
Right.
like, "Rah," I can still remember them too. I can still see people.
Right?
Yeah, because I was like, whoa.
Yeah. So you have to go on this little hike to get down to this nude beach. We get down there and I just immediately strip because I'm like so excited to finally be here and experience this.
Yeah.
And I also knew that I had to like rip it off like a Band-Aid. If I went slow, then I was going to be too nervous.
Yeah.
So I just ripped it off like a Band-Aid, and next thing you know, we're walking on the beach.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna go slow. So we
Mhm.
got down, we got to our spot, and I was like, okay, we're gonna like ease into this one article at a time. And I look over and you're like, boom, naked. I'm like, okay, we're doing this. So I just like, I totally followed your lead on that one. I was so
Yeah.
scared, but then it was like, yeah, here I am.
It was so interesting too, because like we've had like you and I have been naked outdoors together before.
Yeah.
That wasn't our first nude experience outdoors, but that was quote unquote in a
Our first
public
nude public.
like, setting. And it
Yeah.
was such a safe like public experience because
Yeah.
there was so few people. It wasn't, everything about it was just perfect. The weather was perfect. The water was perfect. We found
Nobody was creepy or weird. It
Yeah.
was just like everybody was just, it was beautiful.
it was beautiful. And we just hung out there for several hours and relaxed and we
Played
didn't-
in the ocean naked. Oh
Mhm.
my God, it was amazing.
Yeah, it was really, really nice. That's a beautiful memory.
It was beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. And that was like, I love that memory. It was so significant for us and our relationship. And it was also its own experience for us as individuals.
Mhm.
Like we as ourselves alone, just this was like this liberating and beautiful moment. And it was what it was for me, and it was what it was for you. And then as a couple, we had
Mhm.
this moment. It was just, oh my God, I just love it.
It's
I
one
love
of
it.
my favorites.
It's one of my favorites. And you know how you like, I don't even the thing that was funny and like, oh my God, gross, like that happened, that was like technically bad, wasn't bad. It was just funny.
Yeah.
Like that's one of those moments where I only remember the good. Like it was so good. It was so good, and it was so innocent and joyful and healing. Like it felt like we were it was like washed clean. It was this beautiful healing, so soul healing, soul charging. And then our connection, it was just, I just loved it. I loved it. Then do you remember we went back the next day? Because we went 2 days in a row.
Yes.
And it was kind of nerve-wracking. So I was like, oh, will it feel like it did? Because we didn't want to ruin our good, day. And then it happened again.
Yeah.
It was another beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. It was just incredible.
Yeah.
And it was hard not to go back the third, but we had to go. Wasn't it? We were going to go that morning, but we had to go.
Yeah. Do you want more nude beach time or nude? Because I think that, because we've had like I said, we've had, what is it that made that? Yes, that was special and amazing and all the things that you said, but I think some aspect of it was the public aspect of it.
Yeah.
And how freeing that was in some regards. Not
hiding, not being hidden. And
yeah. Being able to just be seen for who you are and what you are regardless, right?
Yeah.
Do you want more? Nude public experiences?
I do, but not right now.
Not today.
Yeah, no, like honestly, like I'm listening to my body too. And right now the level of healing that I was at then, I was in that moment of uncloaking and revealing and revelations and seeing myself and it was just that was the perfect time. And right now where I'm at in the healing is these layers that are hard, layers that are, and I'm not ready for that amount of exposure while I am working on this level. But is that my future? Probably. I think so. I mean, I'm like 85% sure that that's a yes.
Yeah.
You know, but I only give me that little 15% caveat of it not being just
some safety
some safety in there, because I can't imagine that not happening again.
Right.
Yeah. But also discerning where I'm at right now, which is I need support, care, and love. Yeah. To get this off before I can
say hello to the world.
Let my headlights shine.
I think it's because I think about how different we are today than those people that walked out on that beach.
Yeah.
We're very, very different.
Yeah.
And I think of those people, it was a beautiful experience and everything like that. But I think that couple, the Craig and Steph that walked out onto that beach, are very naive.
They are.
And they don't really understand. Like, we had fuck all awareness of what was coming, obviously.
Yeah.
And we had done a lot of quote unquote healing at that point, but we just barely had scratched the surface when it came to, like you and I feel like those two are the beginning of the journey. And
right.
They're excited. And then, like, if we were going to do a side-by-side meme, right? Like, that's the...
that was a fool's journey.
That's the John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John in Grease, and then John Travolta and Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction, right? The John Travolta and Olivia are out there on the beach running and wind in their hair, and they're so beautiful. That's really so freeing, and it's so amazing, and it was wonderful. And then fast forward to today, and fucking Uma Thurman and John Travolta in the Cadillac after the overdose.
She's just like, they're both...
Right. We've just gone through so much more.
Yeah.
And that's a funny visual, but
it's a funny visual.
I feel so much better today than I did then. I can remember the way that I felt then.
Yeah.
And how much I was still struggling with subconsciously and internally, and how much was still happening inside of me. And I feel way more at peace today than I did then.
I do too. Absolutely. It almost feels like there was, another union or different, like we left part, for me, I'll speak for me. I feel like I left a part of the past there and agreed into a new journey for a new way of living for myself. And then as your partner as well, it was like a rebirth.
Yeah.
There as well.
Yeah. Maybe it was. Maybe that was kind of like we quit smoking then, and like maybe that's the same. I bet it was like the thing where here we go.
Yeah.
And we, we're about to embark, because we've talked about how like getting married was, oh shit, everything begins. And that was another key turning point, right. I think probably, where it was like, here we go. We're about to encounter
we're doing this again.
We're doing this again. Are we going through another one of those now?
Maybe.
It's interesting.
We'll find out in a few years when we look back. Be like, look at us.
Right. I hope we always look back and think, look at us and where we're at today. And
it's been that way so far.
Right. We've got a good track record.
We do.
Thank you, everybody. This concludes the 2-part episode series of this Energy is Love podcast. Go back and listen to episode 328 And it continued into this episode, even though they kind of aren't related now by the end of this one, but it all worked out, I think.
I did.
And thank you for listening. Tell somebody about the podcast, support the podcast, do something about the podcast, and then go follow us elsewhere. And if you want some couples shadow work coaching, is that right? Some couples shadow work.
We're a couple of coaches that coach couples through their shadow.
There you go. Hit us up. We're there. We're here. We're everywhere.